Hi guys, welcome to On the Couch with, the series where we sit down with some industry leaders within out of home and get an understanding of what's going on in their worlds within the out of home space. This week we're fortunate enough to be joined by Gill Reid, who's the head of out of home over at Mediacom and a partner at the agency. And we're going to run through a bunch of questions about what's going on in the world of Mediacom and how the agency and how Gill and her team are navigating the market at the moment, and ask some questions around the recovery from the pandemic. So Gill, thank you so much for joining us today. We've obviously come through and we've seen that recovery from the initial shock that we had in 2020 in terms of revenues being through the floor, lockdown, out of home, you can't be out of your home, so there's huge implications there. What are the issues your clients are facing now, though, on the back of coming out of that period?
I mean, what we have seen and did see from an out-of-home perspective specifically is that roadside came back very, very quickly. So even whilst we were still in quite high lockdown, roadside audiences started to come back. Supermarket audiences always were maintained at a relatively high level. But we don't know fully yet what's going to happen with transit. We really don't know what's going to happen with airports. So that can have knock-on effects in terms of our market from a media owner perspective, who are going to be the winners in the media owner world. What does that mean to their investment? What does that mean to what they do with their tech? What does that mean they do with their inventory? And then that leads into, well, how do we then talk to our clients about what we can and we can't do in the out-of-home world? We have been very fortunate, I think, specifically in the UK, where media owners have been incredibly collaborative during this really difficult time. And that collaboration gave a lot of consistency to what we were saying. That in turn led to quite a lot of confidence with clients, because we all kind of spoke with one voice. We moved campaigns relatively easily. So I think that helped immeasurably. And also what's massively accelerated was use of data and use of mobile data specifically to overlay on top of route, which gave a recency to where our audiences were, what were they doing, and where were they in proximity to certain out-of-home environments or out-of-home locations. So again, we could be quite upfront with our clients about where we were seeing audiences return, but equally what that decline had been, and therefore what that meant in terms of how their campaigns were being delivered. And I think it's that confidence that we're bringing back into the market in 2021, where we are seeing quite a big upsurge in clients coming back. Certainly the clients that we're working with, because I do think that they've had that they now begin to believe that we've got the data that can support what they need to do within the out-of-home channel, but that still doesn't negate the uncertainties that they're still facing, and the fact that they can and will and may want to move and change and defer and cancel. So I think the key words when we're talking to clients at the moment is communication, flexibility, agility, and data.
Obviously, we've seen a huge uptake in the past 12 months, as you pointed out, in terms of the use of data. Somewhat acted as a bit of a catalyst, you might argue, in terms of how to apply data to out of home, in terms of what the pandemic has done to the market. And there's a whole bunch of learnings there that clearly are positives that we can take from this. And there's certainly been a significant uptake in digital, specifically within out of home. And where do you see that growth going over the next 10 years, let's say? So in 10 years' time, where do you see digital out of home, and how would that sort of factor into what's going on within the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think the use, as I said, the use of data has accelerated. I think the data sources were already there, but I think the use of data, specifically mobile data, whether it's ad squared or whatever to feed in to what we're doing, has accelerated massively. I think that again has given us more confidence in how we plan within that data sphere, whether that's traditional planning and digital out of home or DSP type led planning, or whether it's through other platforms. But I think that has given us a clearer view of how we target our audiences, where our audiences are, and what we want to do with them. And I think that trajectory will just continue over the next 10 years. I think that what we're seeing currently is that digital at home is around about 55% of what we do, maybe 60%. But as we move forward, it can easily, I believe, we'll be forecasting 75, maybe 80% of out-of-home revenue will be digital. We'll probably exceed that level because of the amount of classic that's still in the market, and always will be classic in the market, especially in the transit networks. But I do think that new clients, new advertisers will migrate into our space because of the data sources and because of the inventory that is present across all environments in the out-of-home world. And I think as well that out-of-home is well placed to react to some of the issues regarding privacy that are happening in some of the other digital spheres, shall one say. The compliance that we also see within out-of-home. You know, we are a really public medium, and therefore I think as well out-of-home is a very trusted medium from that perspective, and I think therefore that has a an influence as to how clients now view out-of-home. So yeah, I think the future is bright. If you look at this year, next year from Group M, they are forecasting currently that out-of-home will be the second biggest channel in terms of growth, with the only digital display exceeding us. And so that's a very, very positive statement from them as to where they see out-of-home in the next 5 years. And again, it is all about the tech and the flexibility and the agility. And I think that that will just set to continue.
It's funny you mentioned the tech and the digital space, because they're two very hot topics within out of home. We worked together for a very long time, Gill, and we had many a debate on both, you know, the technology within out of home and the application when using it across digital. We had some fantastic successes with it, but it was always a hot topic of conversation. And we're now seemingly in a time where programmatic in out of home is a reality. So using tech to fully execute and be able to deliver out of home campaigns on digital. What do you think the biggest threat to the media is in terms of you know, the future? So we talked about the positive forecast from a Group M perspective, which is fantastic to hear over the next 5 years. But specifically talking about digital, do you see there being any big threats coming up in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be realistic about what the boundaries are that we can achieve. I think when we talk programmatic, there needs to be a real understanding of what is programmatic. And we are never, ever going to be one-to-one. We are always one-to-many. I do think that there is a lovely way that Ali McCallum talks about it being a kinetic, the public and the private screen. And I think that is a really interesting way of talking to the individual through the private screen. But out of home cannot do that and never will do that. And it's not the purpose of out of home to do that either. So really define what programmatic is before we start talking. And I think it's a little bit more about, somebody else said this the other day, about this element of out of home being more like addressable TV, where we are searching for niche audiences within our broadcast mix and really being able to target them in a very efficient way. Now, whether that's in a real-time way, that's fine via a DSP, or whether that is in an automated guaranteed way. But there are two different ways to market, but it's searching for that niche audience and being able to communicate with them very quickly with the right content at the right time in the right place. But that is it's not programmatic in the truest sense of the word. But where do I see a threat? I think I see it coming from maybe certain DSPs coming into our market that don't really understand about out of home, that a screen's a screen. And is it a race to the bottom? There are certain things about out of home which are very, very specific to out of home, and geography being one of them, distribution being another, making sure we are hitting the right audience at the right time in the right place. And that isn't necessarily the same as how you plan and buy across the other digital inventory that's out there. So I think it's always making sure that people who are coming into my market understand what the differences are with out of home, with digital out of home. Doesn't mean to say that you can't buy it in collaboration cross channel. I think that would be a phenomenal thing to do, to look and search for the same audiences across different channels. Excellent. But always recognise that a screen is not just a screen. There are different advantages to different screens in different environments, and use the tech to deliver that different impact and maybe deliver different content to those screens. But you can still have the same searching for the same audience across channel. So I think that will be interesting. I just don't want to see our market become commoditized. I don't want to see in the race to be deemed, you know, future facing and programmatic, to race down a rabbit hole which actually isn't one that we should be even considering.
Now, we can't not mention it, Gill. Congratulations again on your outstanding contribution to Outdoor Award win at the recent Outdoor Media Awards. Love to understand, obviously the medium's shown you a bit of love in terms of getting the award itself. I'd love to understand more as to what it is you love about out of home and what gives you that passion for the media channel itself.
I think it is because it keeps changing. I think there is always something that you can learn. I think that as a industry, it never stood still, and I think that it is one of those channels that I genuinely believe in. I think it genuinely does work. I think that if you you plan and you deliver the right campaign with the right creative, it absolutely does cut through. And when you look at some of the really famous campaigns, a lot of them have all been on out of home from right back in the past. But I do think that probably the last 10 years have been the most exciting time in out of home. I think when digital started coming into our world, which actually was longer than that. I remember the first big digital site that went up on the M4 coming into town with JCDecaux, the DOOH. And at the time they were concerned about it changing every 24 hours. And yet it's a digital screen. So, you know, and that was 2005, I think, that Decaux built that. So it's been a long time coming to where we are now, but all its various iterations over the last years have really made it something that is challenging and interesting. And I think as well, working inside an agency where you can then work alongside other channels and see how out of home can influence or work with those channels, again, has been really interesting and challenging. And moving out of being as a specialist and back and into an agency, I think has really made it almost a different medium for me.
In terms of campaigns that you've seen or been part of over the past 18 months, have you got a particular favourite that you've worked on? Or if you can't think of one in the last 18 months, because there hasn't been as many as normal, is there one in recent history that you can think of that's worth mentioning?
I'm going to be really parochial and say a Mediacom campaign.
Yeah.
I'm going to say PlayStation. I think that the PlayStation campaign was phenomenal, and I think it was delivered again in the middle of a pandemic. It was delivered, and it was unique. It was a lot of moving parts went to making that campaign live, and a lot of heartache and heartbreak, and a lot of influence there from TfL as well. So I think that it got global recognition as well. So yeah. When you look the social traction that it got, it wasn't just in the UK, it was across the world, and it was totally unique and really impressive.
It's amazing when an out-of-home element of a campaign becomes the heart of the wider campaign. It's always fantastic to see that. Given that there are so many different ways to buy out of home now, buying impressions, buying screens, buying for 2 weeks, buying an impact, buying a day part, do you feel that there is a need in the industry for verification and for a consistent way of reporting on that impressions or those impacts, regardless of the buy type? And do you think there's a desire from clients to see a bit more transparency when it comes to the play outside of things and that level of verification that hasn't typically been there today?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've made great strides in terms of verification, and I think that verification is always key for out of home, where it's even in the classic sense, you need to ensure that the site you bought is the one that you bought, and it's the one that's posted, and you can translate that from the classic world into the digital world. And I think that in the same way that you need verification in digital display, you need verification in digital out of home, and you need verification in classic out of home. And I think we need to make sure that all those systems and tools are in place, which the market is well aware of, and that we can track impressions, as you know, or impacts. And we just need to make sure that all the pipes between all the moving parts are correct and in the right order.
Yeah.
But yeah, verification is absolutely top of everyone's agenda to make sure that what we're buying is what we get.
It is that joining up of pipes, like you said, and earlier on, the first digital screen that you can recall being, the DOOH in 2005. That was a long time ago, and that screen's still being bought. It's a fantastic screen. It's constantly evolving the landscape, and that infrastructure, both there on the hardware side, so the physical screens, and the software side. So the tech behind the screens that makes them run is of different degrees of complexity and also sophistication.
When I saw that first screen go in, I never thought, and I remember saying to somebody, "Oh, we'll never get to a higher percentage level of digital inventory." And I was totally wrong. So don't listen to me about being a forecast for the future. I never thought that we would reach this level of inventory and revenue penetration that digital's got. Because the tech wasn't there at that time to really be able to deliver that in such a large scale across so many different environments. So it is astonishing what's happened to. I was saying to somebody else, it's digital and data has absolutely revolutionised out of home, and it's totally changed what we're all about.
Well, Gill, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to catch up and talk to you. Thanks for joining us on the couch for this week.
And really
thanks
nice
for
to see
sharing
you.
your thoughts. Yeah, and you.
Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.